G'day friends, family, fellow patriots. Lord Stompy here in Adelaide, South Australia. Welcome. Now, over the years on my channel, I have tackled a diverse range of issues. I've tackled the vaccine problem, I've tackled the New World Order, I've tackled the lack of traditional values and traditional religion here in our Western nations. I've tackled the JQ, I've tackled the Kalergi plan. The list goes on. So I was thinking to myself this morning, what does all of this boil down to? Okay, what is at the root of all these problems? Now, all of these problems that I've talked about over the years are absolutely pressing issues at this point in time for European people. If we don't really start to get a grip on these existential issues at this point in time, things are going to get really bad for European people very fast. It's already happening. It's not that it's going to happen, it's already happening. Okay, things are already really bad. It's just the real hard blows haven't come yet. We've got a few soft punches in the nose so far. Okay, we've got a bit of a bloody nose and things are looking a bit bad, but they're about to get a hell of a lot worse. So what are the most core pressing issues for the European people at this point in time? Now, here is what it boils down to in the most simple form I can tell you. At this point in time, and actually for a number of decades now, European people cannot protect and defend their women and children. They cannot protect and defend their nations, their sovereign lands that their ancestors protected and defended for thousands of years. And basically we cannot provide a future for our children. Now, history tells us that any group of people who fail on these fundamental key areas, if you cannot protect your women and your children, you cannot protect your lands, and you cannot provide a healthy, vibrant future for your offspring, that you are just going to die out, or at least your future is going to be very bleak. And there's no arguing this. Historically, this is just the way it is. So any of you liberals or you Jews or you supposedly high IQ, pseudo-intellectual people that dislike what I say and you get angry at me for saying these things. All right, you guys, okay, the onus is on you now. You find a time in history where any great nation, any great tribe of people have become soft, weak, and useless, and they've stopped protecting their women, their children, and their lands, and you point out how their future has continued to be wonderful for that group of people. Like, you point out where I'm wrong here. That's what I'm saying. You find an example from the historical records where any empire at any point in time has become fat, degenerate, and useless, but continued to survive as a people. It's never happened. And this is the existential crisis that European people are now in. It's not that it's going to happen, it's already happened. And I don't need to provide many examples of this, but for example, the spate of grooming gangs, such as the Rotherham gangs in England, that has been going on for decades now. Right? And that was going on probably from the late 80s. From my research, in the late 80s, the problem was much less advanced. The grooming gang problem of foreign men coming to our nations and then raping our children was less of a problem in the late 80s, but it was beginning to emerge at that point. Now, any healthy civilization, any healthy society, the moment that problem started emerging, would have fixed the problem for the sake of their children, for the sake of their nation. Okay, this is the healthy response from a strong and healthy civilization. So even from the late 80s on, our Western civilizations have been showing really dramatic signs of not being healthy, not being strong. Okay, and this has continued because our people have never put their foot down on these emerging problems. These problems have expanded and expanded, and these are core existential problems. These are problems that directly compromise the future of our people as a healthy, vibrant, strong European people. There's no other way you can look at this. There's no other way. Like, anybody who disagrees with me on this, I will debate you. I will happily debate you in public. Okay, and that's I'll be happily debating you and pointing out exactly where you are wrong. And you can say anything you like. You can spin this any way you like. And there's nothing you can do anymore because the chickens have come home to roost. The Rotherham scandal, and there was many other scandals as well, that's nearly 10 years old now. None of this has been fixed. Mass immigration of hostile foreigners continues at unprecedented levels into every Western land. So 10 years ago, we couldn't even fix the existential problems that mass immigration were causing for our children, our women and our children. And no one has been able to provide a solution. And yet the mass immigration programs have not been slowed down or stopped in the slightest. So all this boils down to a lack of will and a lack of backbone and a lack of cohesive solidarity from European people themselves. And the main problem here is European men have become a bunch of pussies. We've become a bunch of faggotized softcocks. And I am happy to put up my hand here and say I used to be one of those men. And I'm ashamed of the liberal cuck that I used to be. I was a liberal cuck up to about 10 years ago. I've talked about this on my channel. And it's only in my middle age, once I hit 40 and had a major midlife existential crisis and began questioning everything I knew and everything I'd stood for, it was only when I went through that that I really began to contemplate right-wing ideas and nationalism. And as a liberal cuck, I realised that my whole entire stance as a man before the world had been, what's the word? I was just an absolute pussy, really. I wasn't standing for anything at all. I wasn't standing for my people, for the future of our Western European children. I wasn't standing for honour, for dignity for our people. If we cannot provide a future for our Western people that has a very strong element of honour and dignity, then what did our ancestors fight all these wars for? Right? It took Western civilization centuries and a lot of blood, sweat and tears to become the great mighty nations that we ended up becoming. And we were always nations, especially as we evolved, that had a strong sense of honour and dignity. When you look at the world, the liberal system, the very sick and unhappy liberal mindset that's the current ruling set of the ruling mindset of Western nations in this world today. Okay, when you look at that mindset, it is basically a warped form of honour and dignity that our ancestors fought and died to secure. And that was they died and they fought and they shed a lot of blood, and that was all generations ago now. And it was basically, if you boil down liberalism to what it was before World War II, it was just the idea, essentially, it was an idea for European people only, really. And any idea of liberalism for other nations was entirely secondary. But the idea of honour and dignity was that our hardworking men and women in our Western nations, even if times were hard or if things weren't going well, that we'd, and say we lost our jobs, or there was a period of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a big time when there was a lot of fighting by left-wing European people, old school left-wing European people, where back when being an old school left-wing person actually was quite a lot more based. This is 100 years ago basically now. Essentially there was this idea that even if we're going through huge depression and a lot of very disciplined, hard-working people were struggling, that there'd be some way we could secure some honour and dignity for those people. That we wouldn't be completely ruthless barbarians towards our own people and just throw them on the scrap heap because times had become hard. That's the kind of honour and dignity we should be upholding for our European people. Not this warped modern liberalism, which is basically this highly feminized, eternal bleeding heart for the entire world and everybody in the world, with the exception of our own Western people. Fancy that. Where did this completely warped, self-hating ideology come from? And whose idea was it, and who benefits from it? Who benefits from Western people being a bunch of bleeding-hearted softcocks down on their bended knees, grovelling before the world, always apologising and capitulating in their own nations just for the fact that they're white? Whose idea was that? There's definitely some vested interests there. Some people who are very, very good at group psychology who have spent a lot of effort and time and money to convince our European younger generations to all be completely ashamed of themselves all the time. Our European people never were like this. You know, whatever problems we've had in our society, we always maintain some level of strength and dignity, some level of honour for our people all throughout history. Now, let me just give an example, a single example here, of the absolutely pitiful state of our Western men and how they cannot actually stand up as an organised group and protect their women and children. Now, I have a friend here in Adelaide. He's a based boomer. Hi, Steve. I think you're basically the only based boomer I know in person. Okay, so, yeah, I was actually the guy who red-pilled Steve, so good on you, mate. Salute to you. But about 6 months ago, Steve, I think it was Mother's Day. Yeah, it was Mother's Day. So Steve took his mum down the pub to have some beers with her and a counter meal because it was her day, right? And he got there, and Mother's Day is a pretty popular day. So he was in a slightly more working class part of town. He said there was probably about 50 or 60 guys there. A lot of these guys, you know, there's this thing with here in Australia where the young guys who are the young tradies, the slightly more working class guys, they like having lots of designer tattoos and big muscles. You know, they go down the gym and they work out, and they have these very carefully crafted tattoos, and you know, and they sort of wear these designer clothes but to make themselves kind of look macho, which is a little bit of an oxymoron. So anyway, Steve was in the pub, and suddenly this gang of about 6 Sudanese men turned up, and there was a bar girl on at the bar, and the bar girl asked these, there was a table with a reserved sign on it, and the Sudanese guy sat at the table. Now, bar girl said, no, you can't sit there. There's a lunch party is booked. If you guys just come this way to this other table. Now, the moment she said this, the Sudanese apes went off their brains at this woman. They began shouting at her. They said, they were swearing at her, saying, don't you tell us what to do. We're this tough Sudanese gang. We'll do whatever we like. And the woman was like, no, seriously, guys. Like, this table's reserved. There's another table for you over there. And suddenly these Sudanese monkeys, these niggers, got really aggressive, and they stood up and began physically threatening this woman, this white woman, and she ran behind the bar because she was afraid. And as she ran behind the bar, a couple of these Sudanese apes actually jumped over the bar onto the other side and began threatening this woman to her face. Now, the thing that shocked Steve was this guy's a boomer who's out of shape. He has arthritis. He is the only man in this hotel that the moment he saw the niggers acting like jungle apes, which is a frequent thing with these, especially with these Sudanese immigrants, he jumped up to protect the woman. And he's from an old school working class family, so he's from a culture where there was still a little bit of the working class culture that was old school. There was still a little bit of fight left in our Aussie men. And he jumped up and he suddenly realised he was all by himself. He was this old man with arthritis who was out of shape, facing up to these niggers. He looked around the bar. He said there's 50 or 60 young men, mostly young men, a lot of them muscled up with tattoos, pretending to be macho, and they're all standing there stunned and shocked, and being like, I hope something doesn't happen. I don't want to be involved. Oh. So, in other words, all these bunch of healthy, fit, active young men, psychologically, they're a bunch of fucking pussies. They're a bunch of low-down cows. I mean, what is the point of getting yourself all muscly and trying to be some kind of... Give this impression that you're this sort of macho guy who's alpha and all this, and then the first moment trouble breaks out, even though you're in a crowd of guys who are all European like you, and you have superior numbers and superior strength, everybody just capitulates, they back down, these Sudanese are all big and crazy, we don't want to fight them. Well, let me tell you, this is exactly why the West has gone down the drain. The men don't want to protect women and children. They don't want to be in charge of their culture. They don't want to be in charge of their nation. They want other people to be in charge. If you're going to hand over control of your nation and you're going to hand over like the keys to your city to hostile invaders and then do nothing when they threaten your women and children and do bad things to your women and children, you deserve everything you're going to get. That's history. That's life. There's nothing you can do to convince me otherwise, because history says you deserve, as a people, to be exterminated, to be wiped off the planet. You are a mistake. You are not using the God-given strength and solidarity that God has innately put into the European people. What was the point of fighting all these wars, fighting each other for centuries on end, if our men now just sit there acting like a bunch of pussies? What was all that blood, sweat, and sacrifice for? That's my talk for today, and I'm going to leave you guys to think about that, because like a lot of you guys, you're not too bad people, but man, you really got to macho up and just do this. It's not about thinking, it's not about talking. You got to get on the ground and do it. Okay, day is fault. God bless you all.